funny. She is funny. She has a kind of a off-color sense of humor from time to time. So.
She's a good dancer.
And I did ask if there was going to be inappropriate language this evening, and she shared with me it depends on who redoes the reading in the book. So, Martha, would you please come up and raise.
Thank you. It's really good to see you here tonight, and I appreciate the faces I'm seeing. I'm really moved, so thank you for being here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the book. We're going to have some people that are in the book read some of the stories that are in the book. That's why he asked about appropriate. That was Bob. If you read the book, you will know him as our wise lay leader, Bob. Our wise lay leader. So our wise lay leader, Bob. And without Bob, the church would not be here, because he's one of the three people that started this church, and he has continued to mother it and nurture it ever since day one. So it's wonderful to share ministry with him. I'm going to start by saying a little bit about where the book came from, and then I'm going to ask a few other people to speak. Want to share that? This is what you get tonight. March 24th, 2019, my sermon. Time was running short that day, so I didn't get to read the first page and a half of my sermon in church, so I'm going to read it now. Because I realized it's really more appropriate for tonight, but it tells a little bit about this book. And it starts out by saying, have I told you lately that I love you? Well, I do. As you probably have heard by now, I recently had the opportunity to write a book about it. About you, the Recovery Church, the Recovery Community, and your loving, healing ways. I got to remember what it was like to walk into this sanctuary for the first time, incognito, and immediately feel at home. I was invited to write a book by Fortress Press, a good Lutheran publisher who was publishing a series called Living with Hope. So there are several books in this series. It's for church folks who are living with specific struggles, from Alzheimer's to mental illness to grief to the loss of an unborn child to addiction. They wanted to help people in churches provide a more healing environment for people experiencing these kinds of losses, and I said yes to the book because of you, the Recovery Church, and all of you who are here tonight. You have taught me through example what healing looks like. You have also taught me the pain that can be caused by churches that judge and condemn addiction as a moral failing, rather than seeing it as a disease in need of compassion and treatment. There is still way too much stigma about addiction. So I said, sure thing, no problem, I'll write a book. Have you ever written a book? Yeah, well, I hadn't either. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to do it alone. You helped me. You shared your stories and your hope. You put up with my distractions and my meltdowns. And we now have a book. It is only my story of this community and my own recovery. It's not how you would write it, so I hope it doesn't offend you. We each have a story in this place and our own recovery, and every single one of us would tell it differently, and we should tell it. We should each tell our story. And I'm so glad you do every Sunday morning during the story of hope. So I guess this is kind of a thank you and an apology. Thank you for letting me tell it. And I apologize if I got it wrong in your eyes. This is also a very long way of getting around to the point that I set out to make. And that is that my book has a really boring title. I wanted something catchy, and I tried a number of things. It's really hard to name a book. I was never very good at naming sermons either, but I would send suggestions off to the editor and they would all get shot down. And I'll tell you why. You see, the first thing an editor does when you suggest a title is they Google it to find out if there are other books of that same title. And my books, the title I wanted all had to do with things like second chances, you know? Because I always think this is the god of second chances. So second chances, apparently there are a lot of books with second chances in the title. And many of them are bodice rippers. So that didn't go. So we just kind of named it what it was, addiction and recovery, so people who needed it might be able to find it. One of the biggest thrills was that as I was writing it, I was working with different themes and different chapters, and it just kept happening that somebody would get up and give a story of hope, and it was right on that theme, right on the theme I was working on. And I would say, can I use your story? And to a person, every single person said yes here. And then I said, can I use your name? Sure. Do you want to read how I wrote it? Do you want to read what it looks like in the draft? No, I trust you. The willingness to share the stories, I think, is what I felt the most profoundly about. And so tonight, I've got a couple of things. We have some of the people that shared their stories willing to come up and read their story to you, as they did in their story of hope. And then also Christy Neuger, who's a dear friend and colleague of mine. She's going to start by talking a little bit about the book. She did a review of it for me, a blurb. And then we'll have people get up and share their stories. Glad to see Tina's here. And so Christy, if you would come up now. Christy, this is the Reverend Dr. Christy Neuger. And she is a scholar and teacher and mentor and everything else. She's helped our church some with our care team. And she has worked in the area of pastoral theology for 40, 30, 15 or so years. Come on up, Christy.
Well, I am so glad to be here tonight to be able to help celebrate the publication of this excellent book, Addiction and Recovery, A Spiritual Pilgrimage. I think it's a good title. Mm-hmm. Martha and I have been friends and colleagues for, I hate to say this, 40 years. We met when we were both doing our training as chaplains in 1979. So, long time. I have experienced and benefited from the varieties of ministry in which she has engaged. I have known her ministry as a hospital chaplain, a parish pastor, an associate minister of pastoral care, a pastoral counselor, a seminary chaplain and member of the faculty, a spiritual director, a poet, a writer of hymns, just to name a few of the ways that Martha has made her ministry available. And tonight we celebrate a new way that she's made her ministry available to us. Through her research and writing of a book to guide, support, and offer healing and hope to people who struggle with, or to people who know or minister to people who struggle with addiction. I want to make 3 points, because if I don't just make 3 points, I could talk for hours about this book. It is so rich. So I want to make 3 points of what I particularly appreciated in this book. First, it's a book of resources. Martha has found a way to educate the reader about recovery or addiction and recovery in a gentle but effective style. She provides research and readings and new perspectives throughout the book. She answers questions that we didn't even know we brought to it, but we did. She gives us new questions to consider and spiritual practices to try out. This is not a textbook on addiction. That is not her purpose, and she's clear about that. But the book gives us the kind of information we need to combat problematic myths or self-blaming assumptions or out-of-date ideas about the experiences of addiction and recovery. I found this aspect of the book to be very helpful and guiding to me, even though it's not the primary agenda. More importantly, this is a book of stories woven into a community of care for travelers on a spiritual pilgrimage. I was consistently and continuously moved by the stories that Martha shared from her own life and from the lives of her fellow travelers. From the story of Put Down the Ducky to Call Me William, to the personal story of Easter's resurrecting power in her own life. Those stories moved me to consider my life and to feel quietly invited into reflection and change. I have recommended this book to a number of people, and when they mention to me, as they always do, that they have read it and appreciated it, they without exception tell me one or two of the stories that have stayed with them, that changed them, that shifted their perspective. For the reader, these stories serve as vehicles for our own continuing search for meaning and for hope. But most importantly, at least from my perspective, this is a book of theological reflection. It invites you into the journey, not just the recovery journey, although that is clearly there, but the journey of spiritual growth. Martha is such a gifted theologian. You all know that. You hear it every week. She is such a gifted theologian, and that comes through on every page. There are many scriptural references, but no pat answers. Every theological reflection is grounded in life experience and in a theology of grace and redemption. Martha's own theological perspective, the God of second, third, and 73rd chances, informs the gracious hospitality infused in every page. The stories, the scriptures, the theological reflection are all interwoven into a whole fabric that wraps the reader in a sense of hope and possibility. The deep, persistent grace that has informed all of Martha's ministry characterizes the power of this text. I love this book. I have profited by reading it and reflecting on the stories. I have learned ideas about addiction and recovery that were new to me. I have tried out some of the spiritual practices that Martha suggests at the end of each chapter. It has all been remarkably helpful. And as I said, I recommend this book frequently. And from the person who cuts my hair, to a neighbor who is struggling with an adult child of hers, to my support group at church, all of them have given responses of deep appreciation and gratitude. So I want to offer my own appreciation and gratitude to Martha Postlewaite, the author of this valuable book, and for her willingness to put forward in vulnerability and humility this powerful ministry. Thank you, Martha.